What is going on, everybody? I don't fully believe in intros, so we're going to dive right into it. Today, I'm just going to be covering why people stop seeing progression in the gym. A lot of the times, once they reach that 1.5 to 2 year mark, is where our gains really start to decline. But a lot of the times, people hit this plateau and they don't know exactly how to go over it. And my frame of reference and how I believe people learn things is being able to see things visually and actually conceptualize with seeing exactly where they're at and then going over how to actually fix that. Is we're going to be covering putting on muscle, and this does relate to fat loss, but in this exact scenario, we're going to be talking about putting size on. So we have the inputs, the input potential for exactly how much input we're actually putting in, and the relative output that we could actually be getting, or relative progression as we can just see on a graph. So right over here we have the inputs where someone's maybe just starts working out, they're training 3 times a week, they're starting to actually eat protein, but they're only eating less than 0.8 grams per pound of body weight of protein, and they're training with moderate intensity. It's not super hard. They're not going super light where they're just going through the motions. It's kind of just right. And then people are getting, like, let's say 6 hours of sleep and then eating a 200 caloric surplus, and they're inconsistent with tracking. So a lot of the times when people start, this is where people start. They typically don't go all the way balls to the walls, and they start out with this at this point. It's why you see a lot of these guys when they get into the gym, this is where they exactly start. So with that said, this input is fine. It is perfect and it works very well for people who are just getting in the gym because your body can respond to such less stimulus as you go over on in time. So what I mean by this is in terms of your input potential, let's say 100% is you're hitting everything to the T, you're tracking everything, you're training to the proper intensity under the absolute perfect conditions and leaving absolutely no gains on the table to actually see progress. So as the input potential, this is the actual battery. So 50% right here, relative, is about how much you're operating within because there's like inconsistent tracking. We could be lifting 5 times a week, 4 or 6 even, where this would actually be going up. So right here, what you'll see is in order to actually make progression, we have the input required to only be at 10%. That's simply because your body can just be so reactive to any type of stimulus that you give your muscles and any type of extra food that you give your body, any type of extra protein that you get in your body. It's why you also see such major transformation and such major change to a lot of people's bodies when they do initially get started within the gym. So, and then this perceived progress with a 50% input and only a 10% required input gives us a pretty good leverage. We can see this as pounds gained and just like progress overall, but no matter what, it's going to be up here and they're going to be seeing a good level of progress. But now once people do actually leave that beginner stage, they're like a year and a half, 2 years in, relative, and they put on maybe 10, 15, potentially even 20 pounds of actual muscle, we start to see the progression actually change a lot because our bodies requires different levels of stimulus with different types of actual variables because the standard is now set and it's way higher. It's why muscle progression is so much harder to put on size as it goes on, right? So what you'll see, our inputs are all exactly the same as they are right here. And as you'll see right here, it's the exact same potential and the exact same input that they're still giving us according to the green. What you'll see right here, the input actually required has gone up, where it's now at 60%. Now, what we're missing out on here is this really isn't going to providing us with any gains. And this is what does result in people making like little to no progress, if not even going down. Maybe there will be some ups and some downs, but generally it doesn't hover above this, or typically it could just stay completely the same. And this is exactly where people fall into that habit, is because what got you to where you are now, even though you have a substantial amount of muscle on you, won't get you further and won't allow you to progress to hit that next level of physique, right? Now, once someone does actually graduate from this 1.5 intermediate phase and they start to get more advanced, this is once again where the input required for your body to respond properly does go up yet again. Now, what I mean by this is someone's training is going to have to be more consistent. Someone's going to be having to train harder. They're going to have better form to actually be hitting the right muscle groups, not getting injured across the board, and especially making sure that they don't have those muscle imbalances. Now, this also comes down to having better sleep, training until failure, and having 0 to 2 reps in reserve as well. And then we see like an 800 caloric surplus from baseline and tracking everything. Now, as far as the 800 caloric surplus from baseline, I mean that from exactly where they were at right here in terms of being at 200 calories. They are now over here in an 800 caloric surplus of that. And Specifically, this is brought up because let's say someone, when they get started, they only need to eat in a 200 caloric surplus to see a shitload of gains if they weigh 150 pounds. Well, if someone now weighs 170 pounds, they have to eat in an 800 caloric surplus relative to when they start. Now, I say this simply because a lot of people, they will maybe set themselves at the exact same calories, maybe won't see progression, and then actually shoot themselves into a way higher calorie goal because they've actually just pushed balls to the walls. Now, what we'll see right here is they're still in the threshold. They're actually making progression, and the progression is going to be continually linear across the board. So, overall, just needed to break down exactly where people sit at because so many people go to the gym, and I think that the hardest part is breaking that first 1.5 to 2 year plateau where they've already put on size. Because now your frame of reference has to completely change in order to how much progress you need to see. Because what's gotten you progress within this stage won't get you progress within this stage because it requires so much more knowledge in order to actually get to the point where you have a very well-rounded physique that looks like you actually lift, not like you had just started lifting and you're able to just getting started. So inputs, outputs, a great way that I like to really see it in terms of making progression inside the gym, putting on a whole bunch of size. I think it's always great, really good and important to understand which stage that you're actually at and which stage to expect, and understanding really like how much are you putting on the table and how much are you going to be able to get out of that. So